slut shames the hell out of her.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, Ruth.
Oh, fuck, I hate her. Fucking hate her. So my favorite part comes up. Ruth dies. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Cracking Spines Podcast. I'm here with Candice. If you're new here, please tell everyone you know about this podcast. Rave about it. Tell them it's the most amazing thing you've ever heard. And if you don't do this, then that'll let us know that you're a horrible person and we don't like you.
Yeah.
For the month of April, we will be discussing coming of age stories, starting with Never Let Me Go by Ishiguro. You can check out our store at kit.co/Cracking Spines Podcast. That's kit.co/Cracking Spines Podcast. Here you can find all our reading materials, the books, the book lists, anything you could possibly need that we use ourselves and we stand by. And we have a special offer for Cracking Spines listeners from Audible. Follow our link in our link tree, linktr.ee/Cracking Spines, to get yourself a 30-day free trial of Audible Premium Plus. You'll get a free book when your 30-day trial starts, 2 books for Prime members, 30% off your audiobook purchases, and you get to keep all the books even after the trial ends. This will also give you unlimited access to exclusive Audible Plus catalog and Audible originals. And listeners can sign up for this free trial, get the free books, use the discounts, etc., even if you've already used your account for a free trial in the past. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah.
This is a part of the episode where we talk about our amazing sponsors. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have any, as we are a new podcast. If you would like to sponsor an episode, please email us at info@crackingspinespodcast.com. And as always,
Listener discretion is advised.
yeah.
All right, here we go. As children, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy were students of Hailsham, an exclusive boarding school secluded in the English countryside.
More like boring school.
It was a place of mercurial cliques and mysterious rules, and teachers were constantly reminding their charges of how special they were.
Anyway.
John loved this one, if you can't tell yet. Now, years later, Kathy is a young woman. Ruth and Tommy have re-entered her life, and for the first time, she's beginning to look back at their shared past and understand just what it is that makes them so special, and how that gift will shape the rest of their time together. Suspenseful, moving, beautifully atmospheric, Never Let Me Go is another classic by the author of The Remains of the Day.
Oh, God.
Let's get into it.
I hate when authors do this, where it's the in-your-face ambiguity.
Yes. So we start in England in the late 1990s, and that's all we really know about the world that we're in right now.
Yeah, and they keep saying this word carer, which first of all, stop making up words that like I'm not going to feel comfortable saying. I was a caregiver. I just kept saying caregiver.
Yes, they're all destined for the job of carer.
Caregiver works better. For a long time.
Would you like us to use the word caregiver? Would that make you feel...
I want people to hate this as much as I did. I think them hearing somebody else say it might do that for them, especially if it comes from my voice.
Got it.
Well, more so if it comes from yours. I got the look. I'm not even a straight man. I know what that means.
Did you hate the story, or did you hate the storyteller, or both?
Both.
You didn't enjoy this at all?
I mean, like, why didn't they just run away?
Okay, let's get into it. For those that didn't read the book.
I get grooming, but that many cases of Stockholm Syndrome,
okay.
Not that possible.
I actually do have that question as we get into what it actually, like what the thing is. You know?
Okay. People keep asking me what's the book about. I'm like, I couldn't tell you without spoiling it.
Yeah. Well, let's start with what you called out, because I think it's really heavy. It's the heaviest in the first third of the book.
They do it later again.
Which is the ambiguity, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to be lost. I'm supposed to not know what it is, because this is a boarding school full of children, which I think we meet them around, 11?
Younger than that. We meet them around 11, but they talk about being like 6 and 7 years old.
And it seems very much surface 13,
I think they're 13 when we meet them.
It seems normal. It's a boarding school, English countryside. They wear uniforms, except when it's the weekends. They're playing football out in the field and passing notes, and it looks normal. But
global football, not American football.
Right. And the ambiguity comes across very, very thick in the beginning, to where as the reader, you're like, I get it. Something's off. I'm not supposed to know what it is. And you have me wondering what's going on here.
But it's like, hey, you still don't get it. Hey, you still don't get it. Hey, you still don't get it. I'm not telling you. It's like, I'm not touching you. It's the literary equivalent of I'm not touching you.
Right. He keeps poking at it and poking at it and poking at it.
That kid got punched.
Yeah. I kind of felt like if I say it out loud, what's going on here? Will you get to the point?
Yeah,
like if I admit out loud that my interest is...
And the fact that anyway is every other word. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I was going to count them, and I was like, that's too much math.
Yeah.
I can't count that high anyway.
That would have been like counting green and Geek Love.
How many pages is this? 288?
288.
There's 288 mentions of the word anyway.
Probably more than that. I'm sure she says it more than once.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Kathy's our narrator who says anyway. Because
our protagonist and narrator.
She is the one telling the story. So that's something to note, that the entire story is told through her memories.
Yes.
Which are fuzzy sometimes, which are overly romanticized sometimes.
It's like the definition of nostalgia. So nostalgia, like the way nostalgia was described to me by one of my professors in college was that nostalgia is the overglorification of a memory. So you look back on the memory as it was so much more than what it was in the moment. Like that's why you miss it and you want it back and da 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 da. But in the moment, it wasn't something that you're like, oh, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to want this back one day. So like there's an overglorification of a memory, and it's nostalgia meets ambiguity.
Right. So Kathy is the one, that nostalgia theme comes through in her storytelling because she's the narrator of the story as well as the protagonist.
Yes.
With Ruth and Tommy. Ruth is her best friend and Tommy is one of their close friends.
Yeah, they're like a little like trio kind of. There's a third wheel situation happening later on.
Not a love triangle.
Not a love triangle, not right away.
Right.
But
and even when it is a love triangle, it's a little...
It's not really a love. It is, but it isn't. So I noticed out the gate, there is no mention of parents at any point. That's what like got me like, okay, what is this about? Because they were like, oh yeah, when we were kids. And then they said in the infant's play yard or whatever at some point. And I was like, okay.
The infant wing or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. So how long have they been? Like, do people just have kids and like drop them off to other adults? Like, is that what's going on here? Or like, I don't understand. And I was like, they're not mentioning parents. And I kept saying they're not mentioning parents. And then at one point, they kept talking about their purpose, their
art, and their that was where it really got thick. Where they're asked to do all of these pieces of art, whether it's poetry, painting, whatever, that go in the showcase, and there's this mysterious person.
And then they had the sales, and then they had the trades,
right?
And I was like, oh, they're like raising them to like, it almost felt like orphanage more than boarding school, but like an orphanage that was like, oh, instead of like getting them adopted, let's just get them prepared for life and get them out into the world,
or have them making things that we're selling, but nope, they're selling them to each other.
Yeah.
So one student can buy a painting from another, and not only are there no parents, but they're producing all this artwork that some mysterious person comes and takes, and all of it is about their purpose.
Yeah, all of it is about their purpose.
Their purpose. And they use the word donor more and more and more.
Yeah, they start saying donor and carer, and so
on. She's narrating as what, 32, I think is how old she is when she's narrating?
Yeah, when she finally narrates.
And so she refers to herself in the future as she's telling this story.
Yeah.
Now that I'm a carer, I can look back and see.
The way she talks about Tommy, she talks about his rage issues.
Right.
This is how she introduces Tommy. He's always being made fun of. He has rage issues.
Flips a table.
Flips tables. That barricaded himself into like a classroom type of situation.
Right.
And then when she talks about Ruth, she talks about Ruth from being a child, where Ruth had this like group of mercenaries basically that she came up with. She like really liked to center herself in everything. She was always the center of attention.
She was
always in control.
Yeah, she was the popular girl with her minions, and she called the shots in that friend group. They followed her lead, even if she was very early on saying things that the whole group knew she was making up.
Yeah.
Nobody let on.
Yeah, nobody let on. But also, Kathy, being her closest friend, would step in and play up the lie with her.
Yeah.
Eventually, Kathy figures out how to like put Ruth in her fucking place over a pencil box that was shiny.
So Ruth shows up with this pencil box, and Kathy asks in front of anybody, did you buy that at the sale? And Ruth does this very over the top, sure. Let's just say I got it at the sale. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, ooh, where did she get it?
Who got it for her?
Insinuating that one of the teachers.
Yeah, specifically the teacher that they're all out to protect.
Had given it to her in sort of a loving sort of
Which it wasn't
favoritism.
Super uncommon for them to show favoritism, but it's just not something you really talked about. And that's like a theme that like, it's not just like, hey, we're being ambiguous, like just talking around a point.
Right.
But we're also going to reinforce that by the characters and the storyline saying, oh, we don't really like to talk about certain things. We just kind of talk about them. It's known amongst people. It gets shuffled around in conversation. So they like reinforce the ambiguity. It's like, no, we got it. We got it.
Right.
We don't know yet. And in all honesty, I feel like had Ishiguro relaxed on being so ambiguous so soon, I wouldn't have caught what was really going on so early.
Right. He was really, for me, I felt like he wanted the no way when it was like, when
I was like, no shit.
Yeah. When it comes out, he was trying hard for that moment I think it's actually in conversation where the teacher is like, this is actually what's going on. I think he really wanted to like, no, that's what's really going on. And it didn't happen because it's like, dude,
we saw it coming
this
from a
was
mile away.
so thick. The words that you went like out of your way not to use.
Like, how could you be so thick and so transparent at the same time?
Right.
Like,
right.
That's bulletproof glass at that point. Like, we can see through it still.
Right. So in the memory of this pencil box, Kathy's talking about how Ruth was generating this feeling of being special and being cared for in the absence of parents.
Yes, very that.
Wanting to be special.
Ruth always calling the shots. Kathy, being centered in the story, being the protagonist, would every now and then be like, I don't like that shit.
Right.
I don't like that. So she calls her bluff. She uses a bluff. She bluffs her bluff is what she does. She says she's seen the sale list.
Right. What was
sale
sold.
records.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Ruth bristles real fast.
yeah, she just, her butthole puckered.
Yeah.
Real tight.
Why would you be reading that?
Yeah. What were you talking? What were you reading?
Right.
I just saw something interesting on it. She decided to throw back the ambiguity. Like, I'm gonna bluff with your bluff. I'm gonna talk around the point like you talked around the point.
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
That whole conversation was like, oh, no reason. And then it's the moment she sees that Ruth goes from bristled to emotional, Kathy turns it off.
Yeah.
She was fine pushing her to the edge of the cliff, and then she's like,
don't jump.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
And I mean, it seems like she backed off out of care for her friend, but in reality, I think she was just like, just letting her know I got power too.
Right, right. Well, so the next day, Ruth flips the script on their group dynamic, and when Kathy comes over, she's like, Kathy, can you give us a minute? This is a private conversation.
Oh yeah, because people are known for getting kicked out of this little mercenary group. This
blueprint for girl fight, because this is exactly how it goes.
Okay, I wouldn't know.
The next day, Ruth is like, oh, Kathy, hey, can you give us a minute? And so she's pushed outside the group because she called Ruth to the mat.
Yeah.
Didn't even make her like come out and say it.
She pinned Ruth. She let Ruth pin herself.
Right.
She's just out there in the stands.
And this is one of the first major stories she tells in the beginning of the book that really sets up for the reader what the dynamic is between the two of them.
Yes.
And this push pull, who's the main character? Because Ruth knows she's the main character in her story. Kathy doesn't seem to be certain if she's the main character in her story or not.
And it's great how they use these like different dynamic shifts to set up their characters as adults, because it really does change their character later on. There's a couple wrenches that get thrown in there. However, like when you have Tommy, her relationship with Tommy was, they had discussions about things that they would never discuss with anybody else. They weren't best friends, but they were confidants for sure. And they both had the same suspicions as it pertained to the school. They both had the same suspicions as it pertained to the teachers and each other and different subject matter. And so they would talk privately in a way that people wouldn't see them that often. So he's so all over the place. Hey, let me wander off into this thought for a while. I want to talk about my tape. Okay, you didn't have to spend 3 chapters talking about it. You could have spent 2 paragraphs talking about it.
Right, because that's where this pencil box is ultimately going. That's how she starts it, that she wants to talk about her tape. Let me back up.
Yeah, let me talk about this pencil box.
And talks about the pencil box. And then the pencil box led to this fight where for weeks she was on the outside.
Yeah.
And then when another girl got pushed to the outside, do you remember she turns to Kathy and she's like, that group's stupid anyway. Like
and then then Kathy stands up for Ruth, and Kathy's tape goes missing at some point.
Yeah.
Judy Bridgewater's Never Let Me Go is the song that she loved from the tape, and she'd play it all the time when she could. And there's the mysterious
woman stealing their art.
Yeah, that takes their art, which was walking through the dormitories for whatever fucking reason by herself, heard the Never Let Me Go song playing, and Kathy is holding a pillow like it's a baby, like thinking like, oh, a mother that can never have children, and
she's
idea.
rocking and singing to the pillow. Yeah.
And she turns around and sees Madam, standing in the hallway crying,
bawling her eyes out.
Yeah, and then walks off. Then Kathy loses her tape, and Ruth has everybody looking for it.
Rather than just having the conversation.
Yeah.
Rather than just being like, hey, I was a dick. I'm sorry. Yeah. And the other one, like...
And then
it's
with Tommy,
weeks of these, like, I need to find a way to demonstrate to her that I'm not mad at her anymore.
Yeah. Tommy just is not.
And Tommy's very...
untalented.
Yeah,
unless he's playing soccer,
which feeds into his rage issues.
Yeah, the original reason why he was being teased is because he had put together some art that they would normally do for these galleries, this show or whatever, and
the gallery and the sale.
And he apparently wasn't doing like great work of art. Like that was something that was highly encouraged in the school. And he tried to present it as if he was just joking, but he was doing that with a teacher that everyone respected.
Yeah. So they have this teacher who, as part of the ambiguity, is Kathy remembers that she's always a little emotional. She's always a little sad. We find out that she's the teacher that
Miss Lucy
wants them to know what's going on. She wants them to know what's going on.
And eventually he talks to Miss Lucy, who's like, being creative is not the most important thing in the world. Like, you don't have to worry about that. Stop worrying about that. And somehow she made it click in his head.
You can be you.
You can be you. You don't have to keep. And so he's just like, okay, like it clicks. He stops letting it bother him and he's no longer Mr. Angry.
Right. So Tommy settles into that. Ruth and Kathy sort out that whole long, convoluted story that they're friends again. And I feel like that is
I think they never truly become friends again.
Yeah.
Because I think from that moment forward, they always have this like frenemy situation happening.
Do you think they were ever truly friends? Does this probably go back farther than Kathy's even told us?
I don't think Ruth is capable of having true friends.
Nice.
We know Kathy is because Kathy finds that friendship in Tommy.
Right. So Kathy and Ruth sort this whole thing out after she loses her tape. Tommy mellows out into himself. And that is when Miss Lucy has her little bit of an outburst in the rain with the kids that day.
Yes.
And says, you've been told, but none of you really understand, which I thought was great. Kathy's remembering this conversation where the teacher goes, you guys have been told this so many times, but none of you seem to grasp it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even like, I think it was
because
more
they had sex ed.
You've been told, but you have not been told.
Right. Like they had sex ed where they were taught like the birds and the bees, so to speak, and how to avoid STDs. And in that conversation, they were told that none of them can have children.
Yeah, none of them can get pregnant.
So this is that heavy-handed ambiguity that we read and we're like, okay.
They're basically like,
I get
you
it.
guys don't need condoms, but be aware when you're meeting people that are not like you, not people like you.
Right.
Because you can get STDs.
And as the reader, you're like, okay, I get it. What's going on? Ambiguity. But the kids were sitting around talking about they were going to go to America or they were going to get a job in a flower shop.
Or be an actor.
Or be an actor. And she says, none of you are going to do any of that.
Like
she just hits this breaking point where she's like, just stop. Just stop.
You're getting your hopes up to be crushed.
You guys have been told this so many times and you haven't understood it. So I'm just going to lay it out flat for you. And this is 80 pages in when finally the author just lays it out.
I think it's page 84, isn't it?
81. Your lives are all set out for you. You'll become adults. Then before you're old, before you're even middle-aged, you'll start to donate your vital organs. That's what each of you has been created to do. You're not like the actors you watch on your videos. You're not even like me. You were brought into this world for a purpose, and your futures, all of them, have been decided. You'll be leaving Hailsham before long, and it's not so far off the day you'll be preparing for your first donation. And you need to remember that. If you're to have decent lives, you have to know who you are and what lies ahead of you, every one of you. So that's when the donation comments, making our donations, and the care comments start to come into focus.
Okay. So at one point, Miss Lucy says to them, it's not good that I smoked. It wasn't good for me, so I stopped it. But what you must understand is that for you, all of you, it's much, much worse to smoke than it ever was for me. And I wrote, how are they special? So it's building up. And then she says, keeping yourselves very healthy inside. And I'm like, you just gave it away right there. Because at the top, I said, are they being raised to be farmed for organs?
Yep.
And then page 81, you're being harvested for organs. And
right.
I'm like,
your lives have been set out for you. You have, I mean, she uses at some point in that conversation, short lives twice.
Yeah. And I like, this is what gets me about the Nobel Prize part of this. I feel like Ishiguro was banking on the fact that people don't read below the surface of a lot of books.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you just gave it away. Like you're banking on the fact that people don't really understand foreshadowing or whatever. So that was actually a great example of foreshadowing, as we saw like when Candice suggested this book, she's like, it's like a masterclass on foreshadow.
Yeah. And Kathy even says in that moment, looking back now, we should have figured it out. Miss Lucy, who leaves the school shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
She says Miss Lucy shouldn't have had to say all that. Looking back now, we should have been able to figure it all out.
Idiots.
And the reader is like, yeah. Shortly thereafter, Ruth and Tommy suddenly become a couple, which I found interesting because up until that moment,
there was
Ruth and Tommy hadn't even been in the same room barely together. Like Kathy and Tommy had been like
Kathy and Ruth walked behind him from a distance talking about like his shirt or something.
Right.
That Kathy knew more about than Ruth did.
Right.
Kathy
and Tommy had this evolving friendship where she seemed to be the only one that really...
Ruth is like, yeah, of course I make fun of him. It's his fault.
Yeah. Whereas Kathy seemed to be the only one that really kind of understood Tommy.
And I feel like the only reason why Ruth ended up with Tommy is because Ruth is that girl.
Oh, there's one reason why when Ruth went to pick who she wanted...
That girl fight just kept going.
Yeah. That's why I think that it didn't start with the pencil box. There's no way they were totally BFFs and then the tide changed. You know enough about Ruth at this point that you're like, okay, it's that girl in school.
Yeah.
There's a reason she chose Tommy and they become a couple. But Kathy's just sort of like, even in the telling of the story, she's like, and that was the summer Ruth and Tommy were together.
I feel like Ruth is that girl that puts all of the value of a person in how beautiful they are, and she thinks she's the most beautiful when she's not even close.
Right.
Like that's the vibe she gives me, where she's so vain. She just thinks that like the prettier you are, the more value you have. And she thinks she's the most valuable when by her own metrics, she wouldn't be.
which makes sense because she's obsessed with looking good.
Yeah.
She's obsessed with other people's perceptions of her, being viewed as in the know, being viewed as having a secret, being special.
Yeah.
She is obsessed with what people think about her.
Yes.
And manipulating and controlling their perception of her.
And Kathy, which is, this I appreciate, she's more laid back, and she's like, she like calls Ruth out on her bullshit several times. She's like, girl, stop.
Yeah. And there's a part while we're talking about that dynamic towards the end of the book where Ruth is they're older and Ruth's already made a donation, and I mean, they're in their late 20s and she's doing it again. And Kathy says, I just felt so exhausted. Because it's like after 2 decades, like she was like, God, Ruth, stop.
She's like, shut up. I'll pull that plug myself.
It's just this deeply ingrained personality trait of hers to just be obsessed with what everybody thinks of her. But Kathy, this is a masterclass in foreshadowing, but it's also one of those books. I enjoy reading books where I don't particularly like any of the main characters.
Yeah.
And I do not like Kathy.
Yeah, and it's not like an anti-hero situation.
Nope.
It's just like she's insufferable.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Kathy is
so many times I was like, spit it out.
Yeah.
There's no wonder Ruth is like annoyed with you half the time. You just don't shut up and never get to the point.
Right.
Oh, fuck. I feel like I'm staring into a mirror. See, I can make fun of myself.
Okay, so the kids become teenagers. Tommy and Ruth are now a couple, and now we're transitioning into the next phase of their life where they are leaving Hailsham to go
going to the cottages.
To the cottages, which is sort of like the transitionary period that these kids go through.
Yeah.
Where they leave their school, their upbringing, all of that, into the cottages where they live sort of in smaller groups. Now it's like a cottage with like 8 to 10 people.
And it's not even like
from other schools.
But what's great about this is the cottages give you an idea of how the other kids at other schools were treated long before you get to find out that Hailsham was a special situation for all of the places where the clones were kept and raised.
Right.
It was more of a humane situation because when they get to the cottages, they don't have the space heaters that work that well. They're
using old carpet for blankets because they're so cold, and like they're trudging through mud through half the house. And
and like
the conditions have. This is more 3 stars than the 5 stars that they're used to.
Yeah, so like the conditions are like a mixture of Hailsham and these other places that everybody was at. Because they're like, oh, you went to Hailsham?
Yes.
You went to Hailsham? Like it's already gotten to some of the quote unquote veterans that have been at the cottages longer.
Right. So Ruth, Tommy, and I think 1 or 2 other kids from Hailsham join 4 or 5 other kids that are there in the cottages that are referred to as the veterans because they've been there for at least a year.
Yes. And I feel like Chrissy and Rodney are like the it couple there. Like,
yes.
Because they have to be, because that's the one that's a couple that Ruth pays the most attention to.
Right.
And they're not as obvious about like them being in a couple as say they would in high school or elementary, like they would at Hailsham. So Ruth picks up on this because, you know, like them making out in corners and stuff like that was like frowned upon amongst these other people. It was more casual, nonchalant. We don't have to put it in your face.
They behave like TV parents.
Yeah. They behave like TV parents, like a TV family, things like that.
Yeah.
And you see Ruth start to try to pick up on their habit of like
their mannerisms.
And
yeah.
And Kathy calls her out on it. It's like, you're only doing that because they do that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know why you're doing that. You're just doing that because they do that.
Yeah.
Like, and that starts another little tip.
Yeah, the little like punch she does on the arm when Tommy goes to leave the room.
And then Ruth breaks the vow or the trust from the late night talks and slut shames Kathy every chance she gets.
Yeah, every time Kathy calls her out and she's like, why are you doing that? That's you're only doing that because of this. Or anytime she calls her out on being inauthentic.
Yeah.
Ruth doubles down, and in this instance, you know, when it was the pencil box, she kicks her out of the group.
Yeah.
And in this instance, she takes all of those late night shares, all of that girl talk, and just
shoves it down her throat.
Yeah,
misery style.
Slut shames the hell out of her.
Yeah, like.
And it's like, damn, Ruth. Like, she comes in swinging every time Kathy tries to call out her inauthenticity.
Yeah, and what really pisses me off about it is that you have Kathy sitting there. Like, I can't stand people like Ruth in the sense that they can't see you eye to eye. Mm-hmm. Like, the second you best them, they will shit on you any way they can.
Right.
And it's like,
yes,
you don't have to go that far.
That's perfectly describes their dynamic, whether they're 10 or 28.
Yeah, like, you don't have to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, and like, here's a part that I think is unspoken throughout the book, but it's kind of talked upon with Tommy and others in general, that people know this about Ruth. Mm-hmm. Like, you're the person that goes over the top and shits on everybody. So while you're trying to be center of attention and be liked and loved and all this other stuff, people are aware of your tactics. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing this to other people, you're not embarrassing them. They're looking at you for what you're doing.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
like when you attack everybody around you, they're all gonna like have each other's back. When you keep attacking everybody around you, they're gonna look at you as the attacker. They're not gonna look at you as the person that someone took a swipe at, and you just happen to like swing harder. This is a perfect metaphor for it. Okay, so Ruth will bring a gun to a slap fight.
Yeah.
If you slap her a little too hard, she's gonna pull that trigger. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Which speaks to her deep insecurity, which is what people think of her.
And it makes me
That's
wonder,
the
like,
thing that makes her overreact is her looking bad. Even if it's just one person in that conversation, even if it's just her and Kathy, the fact that she looks bad makes her, like, in her mind, she's been backed into a corner rather than just called out on something she said.
Yeah, where she's like, oh, fuck, I hate her. Fucking hate her. I'm glad she was the first one to die.
Yeah, so that particular calling her out on the mannerisms, calling her out on the behavior for Ruth to retaliate with the slut shaming, that was the cottage's version of that fight.
Yeah.
Once again, they're on the outs, and everything's sort of awkward. The direct communicators that they are, everybody just sort of like tiptoes around each other, and they just sort of sweep it under the rug, and
they come back together.
The way Kathy describes it is things were slowly getting back to normal. Yeah. That's when Ruth, Tommy, and Kathy join Rodney and Chrissy on their road trip to Norfolk.
Norfolk is a place where they believe all the things that they lose, like her tape, a red scarf, all goes to Norfolk, and that's where things go to be lost, because it was like a little corner of England that was never really discussed. They didn't really have images of it.
Right. There weren't a lot of images of it. It wasn't in the calendar that the teacher had of all the different places in Great Britain, because when she described all the freeways and she described all the roads, Norfolk is on the eastern coast, and you have to go out of your way to get there.
Yeah.
So not a lot of people go there. So and she referred to it when just describing why it was left out of the calendar as this like lost little place.
Yeah.
So all the kids take it like anything you lose ends up in lost Norfolk.
Which I think that's like a little fun idea for kids to believe.
Cute.
Like,
it's a cute little fantasy. So they take a road trip with Rodney and Chrissy there because Rodney and Chrissy, and this is where we find out that they truly are clones. Rodney and Chrissy come back and say that they had gone to Norfolk
and found her possible.
And they found Ruth's possible, which is the person she was cloned from.
Yeah, which they
doppelganger is the word.
Yeah, but like the possible is the idea that this is who you were probably cloned from.
Right.
And
we think we saw her.
Yeah. It seemed like more of like a trip for information.
Yes.
That Chrissy and Rodney could get out of the Hailsham.
Right, because halfway through the trip, Kathy says that they were starting, you could tell that all three of them were starting to wonder, did you guys even see it possible? Because they're starting to see through the whole, like, no,
because up here,
you brought us here to ask us all these questions. Because they immediately go to that road stop to have, like, something to eat. And they just start bombarding the three of them with questions about Hailsham because they'd heard a rumor
that if you were super in love,
you could defer and not do donations. You could have 2, 3, maybe even 5 years together.
Yeah.
And not have to donate.
No, my favorite is Ruth was like, oh, there might have been some talk about it and this and that, and Tommy and Kathy's doing that thing where she's like, she's lying again. Here we go, and she's like trying to back her up, and she's like, isn't that right, Tommy? Tommy's like, no one said anything about that. What are you guys fucking talking about?
I never heard that ever. Like, in the entire time we've ever been there.
He's like the friend that can't catch on to the like if everybody was gonna get in trouble and they were all playing like like they're ad libbing their fucking reason for being out there. He'd be like, no, we were here to rob the place. Like, what are you guys talking about? He's dumb. He's dumb on the spot, but he's heart of gold. He does. Fucking idiot.
Yeah. So Ruth's just going on and on and on.
He's a big lovable oaf.
Ruth is like, oh, some of us heard that. I mean, you won't get all Hailsham students admitting that that's what that was a rumor, because only some of us heard.
Yeah.
And Kathy's just sitting there in Kathy form, just like,
here we go. Okay,
she's so full of shit, but I'm not going to say anything because, God forbid, she's just a direct communicator and stands on her own 2 feet.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Ruth stands up and she's like, are we going to do this or not?
And they're like going up this street and that street, and I think it was over here and I think it was over there. And they're like, wait a minute. What did you bring us out here for?
Yeah.
What did you bring it? And they eventually find it. And through first glance, it looks like that might be her possible. And then they go to walk away. And Ruth is like, we're not leaving until we get another look, because everyone saw them staring through the fucking window. And they're like,
Yeah. I was hoping for Ruth, even though I don't like her, that it looked nothing like her.
Yeah.
Because it looked just enough like her that Ruth goes into a breakdown.
Yeah. And so they're like waiting, and they see her again. Mm-hmm. And they like follow her into this art gallery. Shocker. It's like, come up with another scene, Ishiguro. So they go to the art gallery, and hearing this woman talk, hearing this woman interact with the curator of this little art gallery, they quickly realize, oh no, that's not Ruth's possible. No way.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Once they got
this person seems to care about others, not herself.
So Tommy leads off with basically saying it was just a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And Ruth's like, no, I knew from the beginning this was stupid. There's no way she works in an office building and would look so smart.
Because Ruth had seen, and like that was Ruth's dream fantasy.
To work in an office building. And so she's all upset and she's like, I knew this was stupid all along. And Tommy is like, well, yeah, none of us really believed that was going to be your clone. It was basically the tone of what he was saying. He was like, this was just fun and like an excuse for an outing was sort of, and Ruth just goes off and is like, we all know it. We're modeled from trash, junkies, prostitutes, winos, tramps, convicts maybe, just as long as they can't be too psycho.
Well, Ruth.
She went from like, I think maybe this is my possible.
As long as they can't be too psycho. You sure about that, Ruth? You sure about that, sweetheart?
She like
You're a sociopath.
Unravels. And Kathy's just standing there describing herself in this memory as sobbing.
Was it Kathy crying?
Yes, she was sobbing.
Oh, I thought it was.
I finally stopped sobbing enough to be like, Tommy, let's go. Is the line.
And so then they wanted to go see their friend Martin. Chrissy and Rodney has a friend named Martin, and he is a carer.
Living close by.
And he's like, okay, we're going to go hang out with them. They're not supposed to do that. But he's like, oh, he's got his day off today. We're going to go check it out anyway. And Kathy doesn't want to go. No, she's in a fucking pissed off mood.
She's had enough of Ruth. Right? Well, and she finally stands up for herself. She's like, that's not allowed. We're not supposed to do it. Like, you're not supposed to bother carers when they're like, you're not supposed to invade their space. I'm going to follow the rule. Like, for the first time ever, it's like, good job, Kathy.
I don't think she was doing that. I think she was just trying to get out of it and using like follow the rules as a reason. She wanted nothing to do with like that moment. I think she wanted to get away from there or away from Ruth.
Because she could tell that Ruth wanted to do it. Because she said earlier that we're not supposed to do that, and Ruth made fun of her. Remember when they were having lunch? Oh, Kathy never wants to break the rules.
Yeah, it's better to just let her be upset.
And now that she's pissed at Ruth, she's like, I'm not breaking the rules.
Yeah, she's like, fuck you, bitch. And so then Ruth is like, come on, Tommy. He's like, no, I'll stay. He said, no, you go ahead. Yeah. Because throughout the time in the cottages, like, it's not uncommon for Ruth to leave Tommy hanging to go run off and chase after Chrissy and Rodney because they have some more social value to her than her own boyfriend does.
Like mid-conversation.
Right. Just, okay, whatever. And like Tommy seeks out that friendship in Kathy, which I saw where this was going. I think we all did.
The line is, I'll stay with Kath. If we're splitting, then I'm going to stay with Kath.
Yeah. He sits there and he's telling her like, hey, so when we were back at that, Woolsworth store or whatever it was called, I was looking for something for you. I wanted to get you a gift, but I need your help. And she's like, so you want me to pick out the gift that you want to give me? Like, honey, bless his heart. He's like, no. He's like, okay, do you remember when you lost your tape? Well, Ruth told everybody to go find it. I wanted to be the one to find it.
But he can't remember.
He's like, I couldn't remember what it was called. And he's like, it's like July Moonslinger or something. And she's like, Judy... Bridgewater. And he's like, oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, that one.
And he's like, well, I was looking. She's like, well, they're not going to have it there, you idiot. She literally calls him an idiot. She's like,
a lie.
Yeah, she's like, you idiot.
Don't be so daft. You're such a moron. I'm like, half the time through this book, I'm like, tone it down, Kathy.
Really? With the way we talk to each other, you think that was going a little too far?
Did you get the vibe that that's how she was doing it? Like, was she teasing him?
I heard it like, you idiot. Like, that's how I heard it. Like, really? Oh my God. Like, he's not the, brightest color in the crayon box. No, clearly.
He's not.
But he does surprise you with some of his like thoughts on how things work. And so,
but we'll get to that.
But she doesn't. Yeah, eventually. But first, let's backtrack and go on this one tangent and talk about this. Anyway,
it's karmic retribution.
Fucking Christ. Why were you the one to deal that blow? Anyway, the book next week is much better. Anyway, on the way up to Norfolk, Ruth has to sit in the middle of Tommy and Kath. She's keeping them separate, but she's leaned forward between the driver and the passenger seat, talking to Chrissy and Rodney, completely ignoring the other two. And Kath is like, hey, why don't you put us next to each other so you can at least like look one of them in the face rather than being crouched over trying to talk to them. Right. And she gives like Kathy shit for it. So while they're at Martin's, Tommy and Kath are now looking for secondhand stores because Judy Bridgewater was an older like lounge singer from like the 50s or 60s or something like that. And they go looking for it, and she finds it.
She finds it, and Tommy gets so sad.
He wanted to be the
one to find it for her. But she's like, but it was your idea.
Yeah,
it never would have occurred to me to look for it in here.
I completely forgot about this.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, this is the place where all the lost stuff goes.
Right. So it's a very cute moment between the two of them.
It really was. And it made me like root for them because I was like, I want them to be together.
And then they go home and Ruth just ruins the whole thing.
So they're starting to wonder about this rumor themselves. And so Tommy was like, shit, I put nothing in the gallery. I didn't care for so long because Miss Lucy told me not to worry about it. And then later on, she's like, oh, I fucked you over. You should have
After they find the tape, this is the conversation they have back to the car. Tommy starts putting some shit together.
Yeah. He lets her in on the fact that he's been drawing these animals and trying to create like a portfolio basically to try to somehow get it introduced to this gallery because he believes that the gallery's purpose was to show the souls of the children, the clones, so that way they could prove that they were actually in love with each other.
Right.
So they get an idea of each other so to see if they match. At first, Kathy goes into it like, oh God, what the fuck are these drawings? And she's like, oh, well, okay. And then she's like, these are actually really detailed and really good.
And really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like fully into it. And he's like creating like, I feel like he's basically the way it described, it sounded like he was making superhero animals, kind of like mutant animals that are like cross, like they're chimeras or like.
But made from machinery. So if you looked really closely, you could see like all the like intricates
or rubber or whatever.
The circuits and things like that.
Yeah. And so she was like,
and he's like, are you really complimenting me? And she's like, no, I'm serious. This is amazing. This is really good. But you find out the whole reason he's doing it
is to try to show he has a soul.
Right. Because if this rumor is true, the only way to defer it is to get a deferral is to show something. And he has nothing in the gallery.
And what I think this is really telling about the foreshadowing. He shows Kathy before he even mentions it to Ruth.
Yeah.
So if he's looking for a deferral and he's looking for a deferral with Ruth, why is he showing it to Kathy first?
Right.
So I feel like this was going somewhere anyway.
And telling her why he's doing it.
Yeah, and telling her why. Finally, he tells Ruth, and Ruth is like, whatever, about it. And one of their late night sessions while they're having their hot beverage tea.
Yeah.
They're literally spilling the tea and they start joking about it. And of course, as friends do, Kathy's laughing with her, but she's laughing at like in a lighthearted way throughout the whole situation.
And Ruth making fun of the drawings.
Yeah, Ruth is making fun of the drawings. And it's like, oh, come on, that's not nice. But at no point does she say they're actually really good. She just kind of lets Ruth be Ruth and she goes along.
She's caught up in the moment and she laughs along with her. And as a former teenage girl, I'm like, don't do that.
I was like,
you're giving her so much ammo.
As a current TikToker, I was like,
oh my God, you know where she's going with involved. This, babe. Like, how do you not know Ruth by now?
Like
I've only known her for 200 pages, and I can tell you what Ruth's going to do with this.
Like, shit, I could have told you after page 5.
And she does it right away.
Right away. And she's giving Tommy shit. And she's like, Ruth was laughing, or Kathy was laughing about it too. And Kathy's just sitting there like, you fucking bitch, dude. Why do you keep bringing guns to slap fights?
Yeah.
She's like, I haven't said shit yet.
Kathy walks up and they're in mid-conversation. She says that looking back, she can see it's kind of tense or something like that.
Yeah, but she it didn't seem like it was like something that she shouldn't be a part of.
She didn't say a word. And Ruth's like, yeah, she thinks it's stupid too, don't you, Kathy? She's like, what are we talking about? And we're talking about Tommy's art. You laughed at it when you said that and just threw it all on the table. And the way she describes Tommy's face.
My heart broke for him.
Oh, come on, man. Ruth. I don't care what you guys were arguing about. That was huge.
Yeah, that was collateral damage.
Yeah.
And friendly fire at the same time. Like, you were aiming friendly fire. Like, fuck off. Eventually, she feels like that just ruins the friendship between her and Tommy. Her and Ruth, them fighting is nothing new.
Right.
They have these moments, and it's like, and then they come back together and they're fine. And
they ignore each other for half a week, and then they're back to pretending like nothing ever happened.
Tommy, Mr. like White Rage, he learned to control his anger, and he's sitting there like, this is something I should be angry about, but he won't allow himself to be angry in front of them. So he shows his hurt, and so her and Ruth go on a walk, and Ruth is like, I just have to tell you something, Kathy. Tommy absolutely adores you as a friend, but if you think it's ever going to happen between you two because you're a slut, he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
He prefers women that aren't sluts.
He doesn't see.
Don't take it wrong. I want you to take it the right way. He absolutely adores you. He loves you to death. But he just would never be that way with you because you're a slut. And that's when she was like, I'm fucking done.
This is a very common tool in the girl fight toolbox. I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I'm telling you this to help you. He just doesn't see you that way. Ruth girl fights.
Hard.
Spectacular. She
picks them just to have them.
She's good at it.
Yeah.
In the world of mean girl fight, Wow, Ruth.
Kathy's like, you know what? Like, you just ruined my friendship with Tommy, bitch. I'm fucking done with you. Fuck all the way off. Like,
yeah, that was a breaking point. She
like,
was like, I can't do this
She's
anymore.
like, you've crossed so many lines. That was the line right there. You fucking crossed it. I'm fucking done with you. And she's like, hey, I want to be a caregiver now.
Because Tommy's not even talking to her either.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm out.
I don't think Tommy's like mad at her not talking to her. I think he's just embarrassed and so sad that he can't talk to like her. He feels so hurt.
There's
by her.
so much stuff in between the two of them that neither of them being a direct communicator of any type. Or
they won't even admit to themselves what they have.
Or any sort of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Their EQ is very low.
Very low.
There's so much crap in the space between them that neither one of them even know where to start. And she says that, like, Tommy and I hadn't even spoken since that day on the hill and we didn't even know where to start. Ruth says what she says and she's like,
I'm done.
I volunteer to start my career path. Like,
let's make me a carer.
Right, which is what the cottages are. It's like basically a transition place that these guys are allowed to say, now I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready to start my training.
They were supposed to write some essay and they're like, we knew the essays were bullshit.
Busy work.
Busy work, yeah. But like,
because the carer is the position to take care of
the donors, which
right,
the harvestees, as I like to call them.
They're created for donation, but they're raised being taught how to take care of each other.
Yes.
The store is you make things to sell to each other. They're not learning a lot of chemistry. They're not learning a lot of algebra. They're learning a lot of art and a lot of group things. They're
also
learning
just like how to get by day to day, how to pay for gas, how to buy food, how to like they learn to
how to use money,
how to exchange money for goods.
Right, and so
they don't need to know anything else. They just need to know how to survive.
If you're not donating, then you're a carer, which your entire job is to take care of someone just like you.
Yes.
As they're going through the process. So she volunteers like, I'm out of here.
Doesn't tell them, doesn't say anything.
Just leaves.
Just ups and leaves. And the one thing that goes with them from this place, all three of them, is this rumor of getting deferred. Right. So this rumor sticks with them. She moves on to be who she needs to be as a caregiver. And eventually she runs into a
fellow classmate
that's also a carer that's just like, she was always like the Joker and the animated one, and she's just sitting there just looking fucking exhausted, like wrecked, bags under her eyes, just kind of staring at her steering wheel, sitting in the car, like trying to get it together, because when they complete, which is when they die after they've given the last organ they can, or they've just
their body gives out,
they call it completing. The carers are there watching people die, some people that they even know. And because as Kathy is such a good carer, she gets to choose who she cares for.
Right. That comes out in conversation that Kathy's now being able to choose.
Because she's so good at it.
Right.
Because she's like, it's just part of the cycle.
That conversation, because we jump from the cottages and now we're years ahead.
Yep.
It comes out in this conversation that Kathy gets to choose who her donors are to take care of because she's that good at it, which kind of tracks. But this is where we get a sense that their entire future is not just donating, but caring for people in the position they know they're going to be in.
Yeah. And she's...
I know we're hating on the book, but... Fuck, that's heavy.
It is.
Your entire job is to care for somebody in a position that very shortly you will be in.
Yeah, but like you like you mentioned, they had like zero EQ.
Yeah.
Their emotional quotient is just like gone. It's like she sees that position, but she's not like, I'm gonna be in that position, it's gonna suck. It's like just part of it.
Right.
She's able to disassociate from the situation as a carer, which makes her a good carer, and she prefers to choose people that she knows.
So do you think, is it a low EQ, or is it that's what happens when you just are constantly aware of when you're going to die?
No.
I mean, is it just they're like?
I think people have. I don't think it's any type of resolve.
Maybe.
I don't think it's a form of resolve.
But this is. I actually wrote this question.
Emotionally, I disassociate when like if something's a little too heavy, I tend to like step outside of myself and I'll take a step back from myself in the situation and look at myself in the situation and then try to figure out what is going on, and then I step back into myself to handle the situation. Mm-hmm. That's like a healthy way of disassociating. She's just like, just gonna ignore that part.
Yeah.
like it's like it's not even that she's ignoring it. It's just not there for her.
Right.
I don't think it's the reality of it is setting in. I think she's just really good at what she does because the reality is having trouble setting in.
Because that conversation is only a couple pages,
but
it's
spoiler
so
alert,
heavy.
It never fucking sets in. She never donates.
Yeah. So that conversation with Sarah is so heavy because Sarah, she's like, I remember her being so bubbly and
funny
animated. It's just like, she says that she keeps looking like she's staring off into nothing. Like she keeps zoning out.
Yeah.
Is Kathy being the obtuse sort of like how Miss Lucy said, you've been told this and you don't seem to grasp it. Is Kathy just not grasping the gravity of
Kathy is distracted always. There can be multiple important things going on but those important pieces play a role in the overall picture. She focuses on an important piece as if it is the overall picture.
Right.
That's what I think happens. Like, oh, there's something they're not telling us. Why are they acting this way? Blah, blah, blah. The whole time they've known who they are and what they're there for.
Right.
So talking to Sarah, who's just fucking hot mess express, sitting in her car, she finds out that Ruth had a really bad experience with her first donation.
Right. She's struggling.
Yeah. And so she's like, oh, you're able to choose. Like, people just know of, Kathy's reputation now as a carer.
You should reach out to Ruth.
So she finds out and she's like, maybe, wobbles back and forth on it. And she's like,
right.
All right, fine, I'll go be her carer. And so they start reminiscing and talking about the good old times and this and that. This idea of a boat that gets stranded somewhere comes up.
So a boat has washed ashore, an abandoned boat, because again, this is big to them. Like, this is huge. It's like all of the donation centers in the area are aflutter with being able to go visit this
some rando boat.
Rotted out random boat that washed up on the beach. I want to see it. And everybody's seen it. I heard so-and-so down the hall got to go see it.
Yeah. And so like they do day trips, I guess, with the caregivers. But in reality, this boat is just like an hour outside of where Tommy's at.
Tommy just gave his first donation.
So they end up going out to see the boat. Boat happens, blah, blah, blah.
Might as well stop by and pick up Tommy on our way there.
On the way there, when they go to see Tommy's up and moving, kicking, doing great. He treats it as nothing ever happened. She gets a hug from him, and they're like, oh,
he's all smiles and waves.
And Kathy's like sitting in the car, or Ruth is sitting in the car being weird, being Ruth.
Yeah.
She like didn't even bother to get out or whatever. And then Tommy and Kathy kind of take advantage of the fact that Ruth is in a very vulnerable state. And they're like, shut up, bitch.
Yeah, Ruth starts telling a story about somebody in her donation center. And mid-sentence, Kathy just goes, okay, you don't need to give us every detail about this person.
Yeah, just fucking get to the point.
And Tommy jumps in and
call the kettle black there, Kathy.
Yeah.
Get to the fucking point. Really? You don't need to give all the details?
All right. So, but Tommy jumps right in on it. He doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, he's like,
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, you stupid ex. The way you treated me, ho?
Yeah, he jumps right in on it. And Ruth just like kind of folds in on herself.
Yeah.
So Ruth gets really quiet. They see the boat. They have those moments. And then it's on the way back that they stop because Kathy pulls over because she's like, I saw a billboard when we were headed out to see the boat.
Ruth saw a billboard. She's like, that's so stupid, blah, blah, blah. And this is Kathy and Tommy, again, teaming up on her. And Tommy's like, well, I hear those are like actually take a lot of effort to put together and the creative team and yada, yada. And they're both like, yeah, that's like somebody's work that you're talking shit on.
It's
like,
art to make a big advertisement like that.
And then on the way back, like, like Kathy's like, oh, I'm going to pull over here. And they're like, why are you stopping here? Oh, so you can get a like perfect view of it. Mm-hmm. And it's of a cubicle. It's not a cubicle. It was like an office
building.
Mm-hmm. And it's her way of being like, look, Ruth, this is what your dream was.
And they go in hard on her.
Yeah.
They will not stop. I mean, I don't like Ruth, but even I was like, damn, guys, let it go.
Yeah, Kathy fucking girl bossed the son a little too close.
Because Kathy starts it off and being like, you should have looked into that a little bit more. Maybe you could have worked in an office before you had to give your first donation. And Tommy, smelling blood in the water, is like, yeah, why didn't you do that?
Yeah,
and she's like, well, how was I supposed to look into it, you guys? And they're like, well, you could have done that. You could have done this. Why'd you give on? I thought it was your dream. I thought you wanted to do it. I thought you cared about it. And they will not stop.
Tommy's like, I didn't get a driver's license. Therefore, I had to go straight into donations.
It's like,
poor guy.
He's such
a big oaf.
But they're just relentless and relentless and relentless. And then she finally says, Tommy's right, though. If you believed yourself special, you should have asked.
Oh, she definitely did.
You should have gone to Madam and asked. And as soon as I said it, as soon as I mentioned Madam, I realized I'd made a mistake. Ruth looked up at me and I saw something like triumph flash across her face.
Yeah, like she thought she fucking stepped in it.
Yeah.
I think Ruth knew that she wasn't going to make the next one.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to make the next trip. So Ruth turns around and she's like, I have to apologize to you both. I put myself in between you guys. I try to keep you guys apart. The only reason why I was with Tommy was to keep him away from Kathy and blah, 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 blah. Like, she's like, I am a girl fighter, as you put it. Like,
yeah, Kathy assumes the look on her face is that
she's gonna just fucking pull the gun out at the slot fight.
I as soon as I saw it on her face, I knew that I had gone too far. I pushed my luck. She was gonna come at me, but Ruth goes a completely different route, and Tommy and Kathy don't even see it coming because it's so unlike her.
Yeah, she's just like, hey, let me be a decent fucking human being.
And she's like, you know what? I shouldn't have said all the things that I said. when you confided in me about how you want sex all the time, and I tried to make you feel like that wasn't normal.
Even though I did it, but I also did it with 3 guys and cheated on Tommy, and Tommy's just sitting back there like, asshole.
She's like, we all feel that way, Kathy. I should have told you that you were normal.
Yeah.
Like, damn, Ruth. Like, and then she finally says, I got Madam's address. You two should go defer together.
Pulls the paper out of her pocket.
Pulls it out of her pocket. And that's when you realize that's what Kathy saw in her face. She didn't go too far by bringing up Madam. When she brought up Madam, Ruth was like, all right, Kathy we need to have this conversation.
Ruth was like, this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
Like, and what sucks for Ruth is like the one time you're nice, the one time you're a good human being, that's when you're really the center of attention that you were trying to be this whole time, your whole life.
Right. And it's because you know you're probably not going to make the next donation that's on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So Ruth is like, you two should do that. Tommy and Kathy don't want to engage in this conversation. Kathy's bawling her eyes out. Tommy's being super silent. So they do what the 3 of them always do. Ruth stops talking and goes, well, just think about it. And they drive the rest of the trip home in silence.
They drop off Tommy.
He's described as smiling and waving as they drive off. Like that conversation didn't just happen. And they go back and she continues caring for Ruth.
Yeah. And then, you know, probably one of the better parts of the book, Ruth dies. So, you know.
Don't wind up to it, John. Just
and right before she goes, she's like, hey, you should go be Tommy's carer.
All right. She dies painfully.
Yeah. That's even better.
So it's her 3rd donation, and it goes so poorly that Kathy goes to be with her, and she's in
rookie
horrific pain. So as she's laying there, Kathy says, I'll do it. I'm going to reach out to Tommy. I'm going to be his carer, which she hopes Ruth knows that even in death, we can't just say what we mean. So she says that she tells her, I'm going to reach out to Tommy to be his carer, knowing that Ruth probably figured out from that what I meant was we're going to try to get the deferral together.
Yeah. She goes and hangs out with Tommy, gives him a couple handy J's.
Yes.
Full on handy J's.
Yeah, we go right into being his carer to hand stuff.
So they start like, you know, getting to know each other. And she's like, I think it'd be stupid for us to not have had sex if we're going to try to ask for this deferral.
Right. But okay, she becomes his carer. They start having sex and like they go into this sad relationship where, and she does make the comment, we realized that how close we were. Like when they finally get together and they finally have a relationship, she realized how much they had missed out on by letting Ruth get in the way. Because if they had just gotten together back at Hailsham or in the cottages, they realized how great they are together. So now he starts to like wrap this book up in lightning speed. We've gone from rambling for 250 pages to like lightning fast to the end. Yeah. Because as soon as they're in a relationship, they decide we're going to go see Madam. And that conversation happens.
Yeah. And so Kathy has like this really busy week, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, about that. So while I was rushing around to my other like 5 people I'm like caring for, I went to her house and I sat there and I watched her walk in. I wanted to make sure that Ruth got it right. And so they decided to go there together. Yeah. And he's still recovering. He's feeling a little nauseous, a little woozy, a little in and out.
They come to find out that she lives with Miss Emily.
Yeah. That bitch rolls out of the dark. Like, I don't know. I feel like I've seen Monty Burns on Simpsons come out of the dark like that.
Yeah.
Cackling his fingers together.
She lets them in, puts them in the sitting room and says, I'll be right back. And as she's sitting there talking to them, Miss Emily comes rolling out of the dark hallway.
Just fucking...
Turns out she wasn't just their teacher, wasn't just one of their guardians. She was one of the main people that was in charge of Hailsham. Yes. Which she goes on to tell the story that
It's an experiment.
It was an elite experiment. All the other places were run differently.
They were treated like lab rats everywhere else. And so they're like, oh, so the gallery and this and that. And they're like, it was for nothing. It was all for nothing. I know you guys all thought it meant something. We tried to like prove your guys' humanity. Hailsham got shut down. That's just what happened.
Well, there's that moment where she turns to Tommy because Miss Emily knows Tommy, so she kind of
boy with the anger
Kathy says that she cocks her head to one side and she goes, "Why don't you tell me what you think?" She asks him, "What do you think the art's for?" And he shares his theory that it's so that if we were to come to you for a deferral, we could prove that we were in love because you would know our souls. And then she says, "No, honey, it was an experiment to see if we could prove that you." Had a soul.
So he was on the right track, just for the wrong reasons.
Oh, dang. So not only was like, no, that was just to see whether or not you had a soul to begin with, and you weren't just
this whole interaction. I was just, because they were like, well, it's over now, but like,
and no, that rumor didn't exist.
Yeah,
deferrals aren't real.
We tried to stomp it out, but it just started up again. So we were just like, fuck it, just leave it alone. And so like, you have Madame and you have Miss Emily. I was waiting for one of them to be like, just run away together.
Yeah, it never comes up.
They never want. It's not even like it's
when
not
they
even
go to Norfolk, when they get in the car, it never comes up.
No point. And
is that Kathy's telling of it? Is that just her experience, or did as an entire population of clones, it just like did
not one of them thought to like
it
run
never
away?
occurred to you
or did
guys?
we just not talk about that one? Because that's like the thing that they don't do is they don't talk about things.
Because I was thinking this is the conversation where it's finally, after however long this book has been, somebody's going to be like, just go.
Oh, yeah, just run.
Just go.
How are they going to fucking track you?
Because it's like, no, that's not what the art was for. We weren't even sure if you had a soul. That rumor is not true. You can't defer it. Sorry.
And the reason why all this was happening was because of
go.
corporations and politicians. So there was no way they could go to the authorities and be like, hey, we've been cloned.
Yeah.
So throughout this time, now that they know that they can't anymore, they can't like defer or run away for whatever reason, their relationship starts to pull apart a little bit.
And he books his fourth.
He gets his fourth donation set up, and they're treating him like he's amazing and all this other stuff. Nobody ever makes it out of their fourth donation.
He knows he's gonna go.
He knows he's gonna go, and he's like, if anybody were as good of a carer as you are, Kathy, I would want them here, but like, I can't have you here for it. Like, I can't have you see me like that. Like being the big golden heart level, he wanted to preserve himself in her memory as who he wanted her to see him as.
Right.
And so he tells her this little story about whenever he'd make a goal and he would like turn around with his arms in the air and like kind of shuffle his feet, like pretending like he's splashing in water. When she goes to leave away, he didn't like do that gesture and like act like he splashed.
Yeah.
Bro, why would you tell her that and then not do it as she's leaving? Like that was like the goal, like you got your girl and then,
Yeah.
And so she like leaves, he fucking dies, which that was the worst part of it. And then it cuts to her like standing on a cliff, just fucking tears rolling down her face. I'm like, oh, she has emotions because she's like, oh, we didn't cry about it. It wasn't like a big kiss and lovey-dovey. It was just like later.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck did I just read?
Yeah.
Why did I go through that journey? I don't love it for me. I don't love it for you. And if you guys, usually I'm like, have you guys read the book? Like, you're fine. Like I hated this book. Candice hates the cover. I hate the book.
I don't love the book. I don't like the characters. But I think it's okay. When we were talking about coming of age stories, it fits the theme. And I reread it post COVID. And what jumped out at me that I enjoyed it a little bit more this time was this confronting your mortality theme. Are they completely disassociated? Are they completely cut off from it? Or is it just this is a completely different way of being because this is an entire group of people that have completely confronted and are just at home and at peace with their mortality.
Yeah.
It hit different for me only because I read it before. I read it back in like 2017, 2018, and then I read it now.
I feel bad that you had to read this twice.
I'm not though, because Misery hit different the second time.
Okay.
I read it the same way you read it the first time.
Okay.
It's like, this is a very odd coming of age. Like, this is fucking like...
I'm not reading it a second time.
I'm not asking you to read it a second time.
I read the same way you did the first time.
No,
I'm not going to forgive you for this.
Okay, Geek Love, calm down.
Hey, you know what? That holds a special place in our hearts. You know it does.
There's not a part of you that can kind of pull at the themes of this one and be like, this is fucked up and I don't like any of the characters, but there's a very interesting...
I don't do conditional buts. It's fucked up and I don't like any of the characters. Period.
Geek Love was fucked up and we didn't like any of the characters. But
I liked one of the characters. I did like one of the characters.
You like Tommy in this one.
Yes, I do like Tommy.
And the conversation we had about value was like, despite the fact that we would not like... We weren't like, everybody read Geek Club, but you know what I mean? Like the conversation around knowing, not just accepting, but knowing your mortality, does that shape who you are from birth as a human being?
They didn't understand their mortality to accept their mortality.
You don't think?
I don't think they understood their mortality.
I thought that because of the conversation.
I feel like the only person that really understood their mortality and got it was Tommy.
Really? Because that conversation with Sarah.
Tommy says it over and over to Kathy. Like, you don't understand. You've never donated.
Right. He gets it before he even donates in a way. The Norfolk?
Yep.
He gets it. He's at home with it and he's at peace with it.
Yep.
And that totally dictates his personality.
Yeah. Like I said, he's resigned himself to, this is what my life is. I'll live in the moment. That's how it happens. Fucking, you couldn't have done the stupid fucking goal move as she drove away and looked at you in the rear view. Have you, like, you're a lovable oaf, but you are not romantic. I'm mad at Tommy. Fucking hate this book.
You want to do bookends?
About time.
And wow.
I'm just kidding.
Let's do bookends.
Yeah.
So this is where we ask the questions we think you guys should be asking yourselves when you read this book. I don't even want to ask this. Who would you recommend?
My worst enemy.
Wow.
I want to ask you a question. Who would you recommend this book for?
I think younger readers who are getting used to foreshadowing and that kind of stuff. The first time I read this was with an honors English, my high schooler, who was studying for the first time foreshadowing. So that's probably who I would recommend it for.
Yeah. What really pisses me off is he wrote this so horribly, but there are moments in the book where it's written so well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why could you not maintain that the whole way through?
Mm-hmm. But that's who I would recommend it to.
Okay. My worst enemy. I'm going to stick with that one.
You're going to stick with that one?
Yep.
Okay. What questions would you recommend for book clubs and people that read this and want to talk about it with their friends? What questions would you encourage them to ask themselves?
Pass.
Would you like me to go?
Yeah, you go.
Well, I'm sticking with that. The conversation of understanding, knowing, and accepting your mortality.
Okay.
Who's accepted it? Who understands it? Who's in the situation and of being aware of their mortality and how it's sort of forming who they are as a person and how they interact with everybody else.
Okay. Actually, I got it now.
Okay, you got one?
Yeah. How does the scenery, the locations of each scene reflect what is happening in the story? Because when you go from Halsham, it's this life of luxury basically for them.
Yeah.
Then they move into the cottages, which is like kind of a mixture of what they got and everybody else got. Clearly, there's more bad than good with that. Then they move into where Ruth went. Ruth is, like leading up to this big grand gesture. So she's in the nice center. And then you go to where Tommy is. Tommy's in like the more run down center that she learns to love. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So how does the locations of the scenes play into the story itself? I think that was the deepest that he really got with this. Mm-hmm. I honestly, he didn't focus so much on intentional ambiguity. I think he could have, as an author, I can see it in his writing. This story could have been so much more deep.
Yeah, there's a handful of lines in there that you're like, good Lord, that took my breath away. That was...
You'll be seeing one of those lines as the caption on the Instagram post for this.
So I have a fun casting call.
Okay.
So here's how we're going to do this. Did you know that they made this into a movie recently?
Oh, God.
So I have the three main characters as they were cast in the movie.
Don't tell me.
I'm not, because we're going to do one character at a time. You go, I go, and then I'll tell you who they cast.
Okay. What's the first character on your list?
Kathy.
Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, good answer.
I want Zoe Kravitz for Kathy.
I like that. I had Claire Danes, who pulls off that, like, I'm mad, but I'm crying, and I'm like tornado of emotion, but like, say something, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah, I feel like Zoe can really give that, like, you can see what her thought is when she like gives that certain glare, that certain squint. Like you can see how she's reading the situation. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that would play really well into Kathy. I feel like Kathy like reads the situation a lot. And unless you know to look for it, like those around her wouldn't catch on.
Nice. So in the movie, Kathy's played by Carey Mulligan.
Okay. So Carey Mulligan, a little old. That's the adult round.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tommy. Who plays Tommy in yours?
Ooh. Who do you have?
I have Emilio Estevez from Breakfast Club.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Who would I put there? You know who I actually had? For Josh Hutcherson for a while, if he was tall.
That's not a bad answer. I think he could pull that off, especially like the ragey bits.
Yeah.
That he tries to keep under control. So in the movie, he's played by Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, I see Tommy more as a blonde.
Oh, really?
I feel like Tommy's a blonde.
Okay, Ruth.
Ooh.
Your favorite.
Anybody could play her, really. Angelina Jolie. Amy Adams.
Amy Adams?
Yeah, I used to not like her at all, but I like her now.
Okay. I had Anna Kemp.
Okay, I see that.
That like, you do.
Yeah, you do.
She was played by Keira Knightley in the movie.
Oh, that makes sense. All right, what else we got?
That's it. Okay, so I felt like it was going to provide us with a lot to talk about. I did not see it coming that you were going to hate it so much.
I fucking hated it.
That you're like, nope, I don't even.
Loathed it even.
Fuck your themes, fuck your motifs. I don't want to talk about it.
Like, first of all, get a motif. Second of all, like, pick a theme. All right, guys, thank you for joining us, I guess, for another episode of Cracking Spines Podcast, where we just discussed Never Let Me Go, which is the first thing I'm going to do is let it go because my blood pressure is up there right now. But Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Don't forget to check out our store, kit.co/Cracking Spines podcast. We have this month April's reading list for coming of age stories. Next week, we will be covering Feed by M.T. Anderson. And then after that, we will be doing Where the Crawdad Sings by Delia Owens. Moving on to Sandra Cisneros, The House on Mango Street. And to finish off the month, we are going to be doing The Body by Stephen King. And if you guys missed the live stream last Saturday, it is now up on YouTube. Go ahead and go over to YouTube and check us out there.
All right.
I think that's it.
Are you okay? Do you need a hug? Or
I took an Ativan. I'll be fine.
You're going to be okay?
I literally took an anti-anxiety in the middle of this.
Okay.
It hasn't kicked in yet, clearly.
All right. We're going to get John a nap and we'll see you guys next week.
I want food.
And we're out. That was so Schmidt. That was so Schmidt. What are we, Generation Z?
You got to speak faster than your brain will allow you to.
Yeah.
What are we, Generation Z?
Like,
damn it, CC.
Just say Gen Z.
What are you, criminals? From the statistics?
Do you want to thank them for joining us for March? Do you want to recap that we just finished?
I'm not going to thank these assholes.
All right.
Keep that in. I want them to know who their daddy is. I'm just kidding.